In Her Company is a growing platform for women to discuss how they create, build, and live. I am In Her Company's founder and creator. I am also a published author, consultant to multi-passionate women, and socialpreneur. My name is Chris Vaughn. Welcome.
Today we are speaking with Dr. Kathleen Funk, a fourth-generation healer and founder of acupuncture, a practice integrating functional and Chinese medicine to provide natural solutions to health. Dr. Funk's belief in our innate ability to heal led her to earn a bachelor's in philosophy and medicine, a doctorate of acupuncture and oriental medicine, and complete her residency in China. Dr. Funk joins us to discuss creating something new from tradition, the courage to follow our path, and holding a space for others without losing ourselves. Dr. Funk, welcome to In Her Company.
Thank you so much for having me, Ms. Chris.
Thank you. So, let's see now. You're a Filipino woman, a doctor of Chinese medicine, and a fourth-generation healer.
Yes.
So, what led you to where you are today?
Oh, wow. Well, it all started with, of course, my family and the tradition that runs through my family. And I grew up with natural healing. I grew up with herbal remedies and listening to my intuition. That was just something that was normal, And it wasn't until I started playing with other kids where I realized, this is not the norm. People don't listen to that internal voice as much, and I probably shouldn't talk about it like it is. But ever since I was really young, I always knew that I wanted to help other people heal or hold space for other people to heal. And it didn't really matter what form that took. I just kind of went with the automatic things that, very driven immigrant parents want their children to be. Mm-hmm. You're either a doctor, an engineer, or somebody in finance, health sciences. And so I thought, a valid career path would most likely be to become an MD. And so I went into medicine thinking that was how I was going to bring this dream to life. And it wasn't until I got into college that I had this really wonderful professor who took me aside and mentored me in this, because he helped me to realize that I didn't have to be a conventional physician in order to help people. And he really questioned, what sort of physician do you want to be? Take what you have, take the full breadth of what you have, and then see what you can do with that. And so rather than sticking myself into like the very square box that we all expect, I pursued traditional Chinese medicine because I felt like it was the path in which the philosophical tenets that I believed in, meaning that I believed in holistic healing, I believed in mind, body, and spirit, and I believed in natural solutions to people's health. And so I discovered it then. And I found a lot of the traditional Chinese elements really echoed some of the traditional healing styles that my family also carried through. And so what I practice now is a blend of all of that. And of course, my nerdy self is really into functional medicine and modern medicine. And so I find a way to blend that and translate the traditional into the modern.
You said two things that kind of stood out there. The first one was to follow a valid path.
Yes.
Parents, they mean well, and what they want children, what any parent, including myself, what we want our children to do is to be able to grow up, to fend for themselves, to be self-sufficient, and take care of not only themselves, but their family. And so they usually say something like, valid, or especially if you're interested in the arts or something more creative, they'll say, that's nice, but okay, so what's going to be your real job, And
Exactly.
so the message that we hear is like, okay, so this is nice, but it's really not going to count.
Right.
But the other thing that you mentioned, which is kind of surprising, because we also often believe that the pathway to success is to emulate someone else. And honestly, it's contradictory. It makes no sense whatsoever, because we try to, it's not necessarily to look at their best practices or to see how they've done things so that we can draw from what we need, which is what it should actually be. We think that we have to conform or either transform ourselves into someone else. So to hear one of your college professors who you more than likely thought that you had to emulate, to hear that person say, no, don't be like me, find your own path. That's remarkable.
It really is. It's a novel sort of idea, I think, especially coming from an immigrant family, because, you know, the context of that is that my parents had very successful careers in the Philippines, and they gave up everything so that I could have a better life here. And so when you do that for your child, you would hope that they would do something that would build upon that. And so when I was like, I'm going to do traditional medicine, they were like, say what?
They don't do that.
They were like, no. That's not what we gave up everything for. And it's so funny because, you know, my parents are a couple of my biggest supporters in this, and they have always cultivated my love of the arts and all of the things like in humanity that really helped me to become a whole, well-rounded person. And this was one of the fears that they had to get over. You know, like we've taught her to become this well-rounded person, and yet we're telling her maybe this isn't the right thing to do. just do the path that is a sure thing. And it's been a really interesting experience coming into my own in this field, because even within the Chinese medical field, if I'm completely honest, most of the people who are in this field who are at the top of their game, who are super successful, are white males. And I didn't have someone to emulate. I didn't have, exactly. And I didn't have another successful businesswoman to emulate. And I certainly didn't have any that were willing to mentor me or speak to me or help me along that path either, unfortunately. I almost feel like that was a blessing, because I wasn't limited by what I could see. I knew that I had to create my own blueprint. I knew that I had to go beyond what I thought was possible. And it made me look internally.
And that's one of the things. It's sort of like getting a mixed message, because you want your children to be well-rounded individuals, and we spend so much time, you know, we want them to accept themselves. But then when it comes to our definitions of success, or the paths that we believe are successful, it's almost like telling them, accept yourself, but you have to reject yourself at the same time. So what are some of the inklings that we should pay attention to, and what are some that we definitely should ignore? Right.
Weirdly enough, the thing that tells me I'm on the path is, and I hope that it's okay to curse on this podcast, and I apologize in advance, but
make it plain.
It's doing the thing that scares the shit out of you.
Okay.
And I say that because a lot of times when we're coming across something that, you know, we know deeply resonates with us, and we find that it is completely beyond us, and we start getting into our heads about like, no, I'm not ready for that, or like, that's not in my path. Like, as for me, it was like starting my own business, or like starting my own clinic, and then branching out on my own. And I'm like, who am I to do that? And it's that feeling where you know you're on a precipice of something great that you have to really push through, that you have to like listen to the true voice internally, where you're like, I'm meant to do this. And I think that that's what we have to listen to. And for me, the thing that guided me the most, that leads me to that point, is whenever I choose to do something that breaks my heart open, that like that really truly makes my heart sing, where I feel like this is what I'm meant to do.
And so because we don't do that, though, let me ask you another question, somewhat piggybacking on that, is because we often don't take the time to learn who we are ourselves, we often wind up creating an environment for ourselves unintentionally, which is totally different than cultivating an environment that's conducive to our growth, our development, and just the way that we truly want to live. So can you speak a little bit about what's the difference between creating an environment and cultivating it, and how do we tell that we're doing one versus the other?
Yeah. Not subconsciously, but rather unconsciously creating an environment is, doing the safe path, doing the things that you think that society tells you to do, and ending up in a place, 20 years later, realizing that you don't love anything that you've created, and it doesn't do anything to support you, and you have to tear it all down anyway. Does that make sense? Unconsciously allowing things to be created rather than consciously cultivating, creating, making choices in your life that actually support you and nourish you and put you on that path. I think that that's the difference.
And, people are experiencing that right now, because here we are still within the COVID situation. And had it not happened, there would be, I would say, even the majority of people would still be doing things out of habit. And this is the first time for many people, I'm sure, that they're left alone with their own thoughts, that they cannot be busy for the sake of just being busy. They can't fill their days with, task upon task or, distractions, because they're simply not there. So, had it not been for this major interruption or disruption, whatever words you want to put on it, a lot of people would still be acting out of habit rather than, as they are right now, questioning what it is that they've been doing and becoming very intentional about what they want to add to their lives.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's times like these that it really is when the unconscious choices in our lives catch up to us. And it's huge disruptions like this when we realize, when we have like this existential crisis, like, oh, I haven't been living the life that I wanted. And, there was an uptick in separations between people over the quarantine time, specifically because these people who had been busy in their lives hadn't spent as much time with their spouses or partners. And suddenly they're stuck in the home for 9 weeks with one person. And they're
like,
quickly realize, and this happens where like people will call up and be like, what can I do? I'm realizing that I actually don't enjoy this person, or I don't enjoy this person that I've become. And that's so, it's a painful realization, but it's really in that discomfort where we can lean in and we can challenge ourselves to shift and consciously make choices from then on.
Yeah, because I would imagine, you say discomfort, but I'm sure for, a lot of people that's just utterly just crushing.
Oh, for sure.
in line with your practice, though, there's the ideal of, we hear so much, especially on TV with all the commercials, we hear so much about chronic ailments, chronic illnesses, chronic diseases. What are some things that you've noticed that we generally accept as chronic, but they really aren't? And I'm going to leave that open-ended on purpose for you to address it however, because I feel there may be some relationship between what we already discussed and the question I'm asking, but you're the expert, so why don't you tell us?
Yeah, I would love to explore that with you, because I know that we've had a couple discussions about this. For me, I would say that things that we think are acute, meaning short term, are actually more chronic than we realize. Because our consciousness or our daily consciousness is so good at being efficient that it just goes into habit. And a lot of times we don't change things until symptoms start to occur, until like red flags start to pick up. But because our bodies and our minds are so efficient and so good at just compensating for certain lacks, we don't realize that it's an issue until like years later. And so unless we are constantly being mindful, unless we are consciously cultivating that practice, we tend to think that things that are, I just started getting anxiety the past 2 weeks. Actually, no, that's been a lot more chronic. It's been a lead up of a few months before you actually started consciously noticing that anxiety. Like we're realizing now that autoimmune diseases, when you start to have symptoms of autoimmune disease, it's actually a manifestation of over 10 years of living life a certain way. It's actually creating a shift in your body. And it isn't until like 10 years later that you're actually getting these symptoms.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's definitely a different way to look at it, because we generally figure when something comes up, it's like, okay, what have I done within the past 24 hours, or what did I do within the past week? And what you're saying is that the body has been responding, but perhaps we just haven't been noticing, especially with the lifestyles that we've created.
Yeah. And, a lot of these, like the ads and commercials that you're talking about, I know are usually like pharmaceuticals that talk about like taking care of symptoms from chronic illnesses, But the thing is that the covering up of these symptoms is covering up the ways in which our body is trying to communicate with us. And just covering up the symptoms isn't the solution. When we start to see that, there are acute shifts, there are short-term symptoms that are happening in my body, that is a sign for us to go, okay, what can I change? What do I need to listen to? How can I shift my life so that I can accommodate this and I don't have to live with it chronically? Because it's always going to be a choice. You don't have to live with this stuff. But if you cover up the symptoms, it will be chronic.
Yeah, and the commercials really don't help either, because they paint perfectly happy couple or individual, and they're smiling through the commercial and whatnot, and then it gets to the end and it says, oh yeah, by the way, and this may cause, and I'm being facetious here, this may cause small earthquakes, minor irritations, threaten risk of heart attack, it may cause death, and the person on the screen is still smiling. It's like,
still smiling.
Okay, so
blissfully smiling.
Your so-called cure is worse than what you have. No, just bear with it.
Right. And I often wonder what our lives and our health would be like if it wasn't just big pharma doing those commercials. Like, what if natural medicine did that? What if natural medicine did ads like that and allowed people to see like that side and what
that's a great
the potential
idea,
of the medicine.
That is a great idea. You should do that. Because it's a different approach, and dependent on what you're treating, it may be more gradual, it may take longer, but the body's response to it is so much better, and it lasts longer. So my husband grew up in Germany, and I've heard from my friends, they don't allow commercials like that on TV like what we have here.
Ooh.
And their populations are, far healthier. So, but that's another discussion.
Well, the naturopathic medicine in Germany is pretty big, and they're making leaps and bounds in like stem cell research, and I think it's really interesting what they were doing there. I have a few of my patients who've actually gone to Germany for treatments there, because they provide treatments that we're just simply not allowed to touch here in the States. But these are natural treatments, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It makes me feel emboldened too when I hear that, because it's like, Big Pharma does this, why don't natural medicine healers do this too? Because I feel like we owe it to the public to be able to let them know that there are other options. And not to say that I'm against Western medicine, because I think I love and respect it, and I think that there's a time and place for it. But just like natural medicine, it isn't the only answer.
Right. And so something that's also relevant today is, stress. Being able to release stress and to retain our own energy is so important now, more so than ever. So what are some of the ways that we can hold space for others? Because there's so much going on nowadays. It's not only for illnesses, is things that we didn't even realize, like the pain we didn't even realize that so many of us are carrying with us. And so how can we hold space for others without losing ourselves? And that's not only for the caregivers who may be taking care of their parents, but, just in general, how can we hold space for others without losing ourselves?
Yeah, balance and measure, being able to balance and listen to one's own body too, because we're responsible for this body and this spirit as well. And so we have to be able to take care of this in order for us to be able to hold space for other people. And something that I really want to touch on, especially as a healer, is that I think that a lot of healers mistake their ego for their want to heal. And so, and I don't mean this in a judgmental sort of way, because I think we all fall into this where it's just like, I need to heal this person. And so we put all of our energy into it. And when it doesn't work out the way we want to, we blame ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. But truly, it isn't the healer's power that heals a person. Your only task is to be able to hold space for another person. And when you do that, you don't put your ego into it. You don't put yourself and muddy up that connection, if that makes sense. And so the energy is very different in that space. And that's one of the ways that one can hold space for healing and not get lost in the sauce, as they say.
Gotcha. Because we all, even what people would consider the traditional doctor-patient relationship, that's a partnership. The doctor can, regardless of the practice, the doctor, of course, has the knowledge and they can tell you what's going on with your body and how best to care for it. However, your health is still your responsibility. And so you always have the responsibility to not only educate yourself the best of your ability with what's going on, but the responsibility to your own self to carry that through, to see yourself back to your optimum health. Nobody's going to go home and make you take the medicine or whatever else, of course, within special cases. So, yeah. But that responsibility it doesn't leave us just because we enter into a relationship with someone who's going to help treat us.
Right. And so like being aware that your autonomy and your authority in that space, I think that a lot of people move into working with their doctors and they're like, anything that he says goes. And, one should take the time to research whether or not this person knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's a lot of education that goes into becoming a doctor and becoming a physician. And there's authority in that. But at the end of the day, you know your body the best. You're the person who has to experience it day in, day out, 24/7. And so if something doesn't resonate with you, you need to find something that does. You need to find a physician that is willing to listen and collaborate with you. And, so much of the healing process is finding somebody who resonates.
Yeah, and speaking of resonating, I read several articles and they were talking about the role of not only ethnicity, but the role of culture in health or the patient's heritage in health. Can you speak a little bit towards that?
Yeah, I think that indigenous medicine encompass mind, body, and spirit. And that is something that's missing in westernized medicine, I believe, or colonialized medicine. Mm-hmm. The aspect of the mind and spirit aligning with the body is not really something that we talk about. Like, when's the last time you went to your gynecologist and you're like, hey, I have irregular periods. And they're like, how's your spirit though? That isn't
call in
a
now if you've
conversation
ever
that
had
happens.
your doctor ask you that, because I haven't.
Yeah, and the thing is, in Chinese medicine, that is a huge part of what happens. So we all know that stress affects our hormones, and that is one level, on the physiological level. But when things shift in our spirit, it trickles down into our physical blueprint as well. And so being able to tap into these indigenous medicines can harken back to this time of pre-colonial medicine, harken back to this deep generational healing where we can start to reintegrate parts of ourselves that we may have lost through this colonialization.
Oh,
the interesting thing is that it's not just BIPOC. It's not just Black, Indigenous people of color that feel this healing. It's also Caucasian people. It's people of all different walks of life, orientations, and color, because we all have that mind, body, and spirit that we need to reintegrate. And even if you are outside of the color spectrum, perhaps, you still find healing in an indigenous medicine.
Yeah, because everybody has, such rich cultures. There's such rich diversity, just all throughout life. And you have to wonder if part of our ailments are because we're really disconnected from ourselves and we're disconnected from each other.
Yeah, and I find that being able to touch into that part of oneself makes one more open to connect with other people. And really that at the root of my medicine and my practice is what I hope to do with everyone. I want people to be able to tap into themselves and realize that, at the core of it, we're just spirits embodied. We all have the same drive. We all have, yeah. And exactly. We might have grown up in different cultures, but we all are trying to move in the same direction.
So you mentioned it at the beginning of our conversation, and I want to bring this into creating or weaving something new from tradition. So all throughout this conversation, you were mentioning how your path, no matter what you did, basically, no matter what you set out to do, it led you back to yourself, and you allowed your path to bring you back to yourself, back to what was truly you, and further embracing not only yourself, but your culture, your heritage, your upbringing, etc. There's an idea that in order to make room for ourselves, or in order to create, that we have to destroy. That's obviously not necessarily the case. So from your own example, how can we make spaces for ourselves and weave something new in light of tradition or in light of the past?
I would say that we start off, we got to trust the journey, and we got to trust the detour. Because speaking very specifically with my path, if I didn't trust the detour, if I didn't explore Western medicine, if I didn't get into that side of it, I wouldn't have been able to come to a point where I could blend these medicines, And if I had just started off with traditional medicine, I wouldn't have explored the other side of this too. And I feel like that detour made me stronger as a physician. It made me stronger as a healer, and even better, it gave me an opportunity to better know myself. And I think that we transform and transmute more so than we destroy, because there's so much in our past, in our lineages, in our history that make up of who we are right now in this very point in time. And if we were to destroy that, we would essentially be destroying parts of ourselves. Yeah. And so finding ways to honor that, but then also furthering that so that we can make it relevant for ourselves and for future generations is really important.
So by honoring those things that you mentioned, it takes the pressure off also, I would imagine. And we begin to pay attention to our own flows in addition to that as individuals along this path, because we hear so much about trusting the journey. I've never heard anyone say trust the detour. Detours are typically something that we fight against, we rail against, or we just like, oh my gosh, what the heck, go into panic over. It's like, what's going on? We had a plan and then, tangent. And if we can trust the detour, and if we can, in fact, honor, I'm assuming that our bodies would be in a better position to heal, and so would our lives. But of course, that's easier said than done, So,
right.
What are some practical ways, like just 2 or 3 practical ways that our listeners can even begin to do this so that they can get on whatever is the right track for them?
I think that my favorite thing to suggest to people, that I think that it like hits all of the high points that I think are important in being mindful in cultivating one's own path and even one's own health. There's physiological benefits, spiritual benefits, and even like psychological benefits from it. And it's completely free. It's meditation and just taking time to oneself to listen. Meditation and prayer, really, where I know you and I have had this conversation where prayer is more so like in dialogue with the divine, whereas meditation is simply listening. And that's where we can see situations like detours, and we can listen and we can understand what we're meant to learn from those detours so that we can move forward and integrate them into something so much greater than what we thought we were capable of. And it brings to mind, the journey that you've shared with me, Ms. Chris, because like, I know that you had a history of being a consultant, and then you also became an author, and now you're here putting women in the front spotlight and spotlighting people of color and women-owned businesses as well. And you've taken all that you've learned, even through the detour of being an author, and you created something so much greater than what you had before.
Oh, thank you for the kind words. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's the truth.
Because I do enjoy that. I never thought I would be an author, and I've taken the creativity that I discovered, because I never even thought I was creative. My version of being creative was creating businesses, creating projects. It was definitely not not writing. I've taken that creativity and placed it into what I do now, and am able to help women at an entirely different and deeper level than what I have been before. So thank you so much for realizing that.
For sure. And something that we have to remind ourselves, and I'm saying this also as like a reminder to self, that like life is not linear. There is always going to be an ebb and flow. And somehow our society has tricked us into thinking that like, if you're successful, then you stay successful all the time, and you never drop down from that, and you never have to recalibrate.
Heck yeah, it's supposed to be that straight trajectory. You're rocketing and you're jetting forward to where you need to be. Nobody ever tells you about the flows. You think that if you ran into an ebb somewhere, that means you did something wrong.
Yeah, and it isn't failure. It's when we back off of that and we recalibrate, and we realize, I have a passion in something else. I have a talent to create something else other than what I was creating before. Now, then when you get back into that flow, then you can take all of the lessons that you've learned from there and reintegrate it. But the thing is that you have to be mindful, and you have to be grounded enough to be able to see those things happening in front of you, or else it happens like at a split second, and you end up falling back into a habit of unconsciously creating rather than consciously creating.
Well, Dr. Funk, thank you so much for the insight that you shared with us. But please tell our listeners what's next on the agenda for you and how can they reach you?
What is next on the agenda is we are currently reopening our clinic, and we're still seeing patients virtually. So if you are interested in exploring your health deeper and getting to the roots of your healing, then please reach out to us. Our website is acupuncture.com. It's ACUFUNKTORE.com. And you can also find me on IG, where we share a lot of functional med, spiritual health, and mind-body medicine tips on IG at acupuncture.
Well, again, thank you, Dr. Funk, for spending this time with us today, for sharing your insight and your path. It's so obvious how connected that you are, not only within your own life, but to those that you serve as well. So thank you for being with us today.
Oh, my gosh. Miss Chris, it is always a pleasure to chat with you. You're my tea friend, and we can always chat over a cup of tea anytime.
Thank you.
Our first live event of 2020 happens Tuesday, June 30th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5:30 p.m. British Summer Time. Join us for the Not Just Tea panel as 4 women with varying perspectives and expertise discuss how industrialization and colonization has shaped our view of tea culture, kept a 5,000-year-old history hidden, the future of ancient indigenous tea and its traditions, and the surrounding ecology it stands to impact. Registration is now open. Visit notjusttea.eventbrite.com to join the conversation. Thank you for listening. We invite you to become part of this growing platform for women, showcasing how we create, build, and live, to help you answer the question, what's next, and create a plan to get it. Join our email list for opportunities to connect, get involved, and move from transition to transformation. Great things truly do happen when women gather. Till next time, my name is Chris Vaughn. This is In Her Company.